This is Ivan Brandon, and you're watching Variant Edition.
Hi, and welcome to Variant Edition, your first weekly video podcast show covering everything in the comic book world. I'm Ricky.
And I'm Mike.
So we're back to our full-length goodness for everyone out there. I know that, the short episodes aren't as
fulfilling.
So
Good? Was good the word you were looking for?
Well, I wouldn't say good. I was going for more the appetite thing. But we have a ton of reviews again this week. I have a Street Fighter review, but not on an issue. The Ultimate Edition. Ooh. CVO, which is a book not many of you probably know about that you should know about. I have Iron Man, the final of that, and Cable Deadpool. Mike is doing... What are you doing this week?
I'm not telling you what I'm doing this week. It is going to be a complete surprise because I have not yet selected.
Oh, you rebel.
Oh, yeah. I'm flying by the seat of my pants today.
Rebel. We also have a new reviewer. Now, this has been a viewer of the show. Kevin is friends with her, whatever. Wanted to bring her in to do some reviews that maybe me or you or Nick or even him don't necessarily review. She's going to do. So we have a lot of stuff to get to. We still have a statue review. We have Nick. He's covering Walking Dead. And he's got the news, so we're going to shoot it over to him.
Hi, I'm Nick, and this is the news for the week of Wednesday, September 27th. Last week, McFarlane Toys announced an unprecedented 30th series of Spawn action figures. This new series of toys will see a few differences from previous toy lines. First, the figures will be designed in the tradition of Saturday morning cartoons. Second, Spawn is known as Spawn X. Leading up to the November release, Spawn.com is releasing an online comic, The Adventures of Spawn. Drawn by celebrated comic artist Kerry Randolph and written by Jonathan David Goff, The Adventures of Spawn online comic includes complete character biographies, a story-specific glossary, and actual comic book pages, posted in 4-page increments. Remember, kids, Spawn X stands for Extreme! Most would argue that last week's biggest release was Marvel Comics Civil War #4, and while that series has set the Avengers in the limelight, expect even more if a planned Avengers movie gets made. According to The Hollywood Reporter, once most of the characters needed to make up the Avengers have had their own films, Marvel intends to release a live-action team-up of the Avengers on the big screen. Zach Penn is set to write the screenplay, and fans will remember him as a writer on the second and third X-Men films. As some of the main characters have only just recently had films announced, it could be quite some time until we actually see an Avengers film. In more Marvel movie news, Marvel Studios has announced that Jonathan Mastow will direct The Submariner as his next film. Mastow's past work includes Terminator 3, U-571, and Breakdown. Could his U-571 star Matthew McConaughey be set to star in The Green Tights? Alright, Marvel isn't the only comic book company making movies. The Los Angeles Times is reporting that Johnny Depp is in talks to play the lead character and produce an adaptation of Rex Mundi. Current publisher Dark Horse describes Rex Mundi as one man's quest to solve a murder, which may lead him to the Holy Grail itself, in a Paris where magic is real and the Catholic Church never lost its political power. The New York Comic Con is still months away, but con organizers have announced new additions to the guest list. The convention has already announced that legendary comic book writer and creator Stan Lee will be a guest of honor, and now it adds Jeff Smith as a guest of honor. Poor guy's got to follow up Stan Lee. Also, expect to see Frank Cho, Jonan Vasquez, Bill Sienkiewicz, Alison Bechdel, Frank Berner, and Rich Buckler, in addition to the previously announced guest. The con will run February 23rd through the 25th. A quick follow-up to last week's bizarre story of Marvel and Guiding Light crossover. The story is set prior to the Civil War. The comic spins out of events taking place on November 1st on the show, and while Avengers will not appear on TV, characters from the show will be in the comic to interact with the new Avengers. Does anybody else think this is a bad idea? So that's it for the news this week. I'll be back later in the episode with my review of the new Walking Dead.
Alright, my first review this week is Cable Deadpool. Now this basically just picks off right back where it left off. Cable, Deadpool, in the President's office, still discussing what they should do with the Superhuman Registration Act. And Cable, at some point, kind of convinces the President that, what's going on is wrong and has all these reasons when blah, blah, blah. It was a very slow-moving issue, but it had a lot of background as to, why Cable is doing what he's doing. One of the main points in it was that Cable wanted to get Deadpool off his high horse of being a badge-carrying member. So he takes them to all different places, and he lets Deadpool beat the crap out of him to kind of just prove a point that, you know, all superhumans are basically on the same side. And what's going on with the Superhuman Registration Act, it's separating the sides, and they're eventually just going to annihilate each other, is basically what they're saying. Cable's trying to do this just to Deadpool to kind of just get him on his side and be like, listen, you know, we're brothers, we've been doing this forever, you know, there's no reason why you should come after me, I'm trying to save everything, and blah, blah, blah. They go through the whole thing. The issue is very slow. Little to almost no action, but it's a very good Civil War tie-in issue. Definitely a worthwhile read if you're into the Civil War thing.
So I've been reading a lot of the Brave New World from DC. This, of course, includes stuff like Oeming and Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters and the Creeper and my newfound favorite, Trials of Shazam. #2 this is. And it's a great comic. This kind of shows you that Billy Batson as Captain Marvel can no longer be Captain Marvel. He's now step up and become Shazam, the Almighty Wizard. Unfortunately, this means that Billy Batson has to become the all-powerful Wizard Shazam, which means that now Shazam, the Wizard, has to have a new acolyte, a human and mystic power to add balance to the Force, as I'm going to call it from now on, and, you know, just keep things on a level playing field. So where are you going to find somebody like this? And so Captain Marvel Jr. returns. And so does Mary Marvel, but Captain Marvel Jr. is where this story is concentrating, because now Captain Marvel Jr. has to go see, you know, Solomon and Zeus and Hercules and Achilles and all these great, you know, godlike beings, and he's got to go through these tests in order to prove that he is worthy of donning the mantle that is Captain Marvel. And if he doesn't do it, then all of the Marvel family is done. It's got to get passed to another line of people now, because you weren't good enough to beat all the tests of you know, these old gods from mythic times. So it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see where they're going with this book. There's some cool H.P. Lovecraft monsters running about. I'm really looking forward to it, and I have great high hopes for this book and think it's going to be amazing. Pick it up if you like the Mystic Universe. If you're not a big fan of the Mystic Universe, give it a shot anyway, because they're kind of revamping the whole Captain Marvel series right now, and it's a good time to jump on the train.
Now I'm reviewing African Blood CVO, Covert Vampiric Operations. This is a book I saw previews of, I saw the variant cover, and it was just a bloody head for a variant. I was like, you know, I'm into that. I'm going to read this book. Bloody head on a cover, I'm down. But it also had a very military feel to it. You get a big backstory on the main character and his involvement with the CVO. Now, this is a book that's put out by IDW. Big fan of IDW, and, you know, I want to do more reviews of IDW, so I saw this and I was like, Kev, I'm doing it. But book is just basically a big setup for a very sensitive operation, as it was called. Basically, you have a demon-like character, resembles Satan, who is he's one of the heads of the CVO, and he kind of goes into depth as to, you know, the actual CVO members, who's ready to go for it, who's not. And as it's going on, your main character gets a backstory of how his involvement with his friend during an African war. They didn't specify which one it was, but they had a whole big involvement in that, and they go through, he goes, this guy was one time my brother, and I would do anything for him, and it was just basically that his friend was just sacrificing himself to kind of leave no man behind, as, you know, in war, that's how it is. But he ends up getting him out, and these vampires in Africa, as they're zombie, you know, they're not even really vampires, they're more zombie-like than anything. Like, they were shooting their heads off, and their heads would float around and go after them. It was pretty interesting. Floating head coming at you, it's a little weird. Zombies, that's okay. Floating head, no. But basically, his friend ends up dying, and it turns out, years later, the CVO's established, he's a part of it, and it turns out that one of the main guys that they have to take out is now his friend that was killed in the previous African war. So, big drama. It's like a bad soap opera. But since it's a bad soap opera, I will keep reading it because, well, what can I say? I'm a sucker for it. So, lots of blood and guts, good war story, floating heads. Buy it.
So, Captain America #22, Civil War tie-in. An important book, but not too important. It kind of sets you up and lets you know how people around Cap are feeling, such as his S.H.I.E.L.D. assistant is what I'm going to call her because I forgot the actual term. It's okay, you know. The S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to use his liaison as bait and lure out Cap from a Secret Avengers little hideaway, and they're going to be on a rooftop, and then they're going to go to a room downstairs, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. Cape Killers are going to, come down and arrest Captain America. However, the liaison decides to scramble her tracking unit and, takes him to a different safe house where they, make a little bit of the slappy-slap. Thank you, Mike Hawthorne. And, she's supposed to call him in and hand him over to S.H.I.E.L.D., and she doesn't. So this is an interesting character point for her. Not interesting enough to make her a big character, in my opinion, but still kind of interesting. The only other thing you need to know about is that at the end, the Red Skull is in fact involved in this, and he's like, "Stupid Americans, let them fight each other. That's just perfect for my evil plans." So you got Red Skull involved in Civil War now too, and I just think that's really great because I haven't seen the Red Skull in a very long time. So even though it's a Civil War tie-in, I'm looking forward to having him, come in possibly at the end with some Nazis and mess up America. It'll be great fun.
My first review is Brian K. Vaughan and Nico Onrishon's Pride of Baghdad. Pride tells the inspired by true events story of 4 lions who escaped the Baghdad Zoo during the 2003 invasion. Okay, I'll admit I'm a huge fan of BKV. I just reread Why the Last Man, and I'm partway through Runaways, just to get the bias out of the way. So fans of Vaughan may be wondering, how does Pride stack up? Well, it doesn't disappoint. Much like his other books, the premise doesn't reveal the depth that we find in the book's characters and situations. In this case, a pride of 4 lions are freed when the bombs destroy much of a zoo. Hungry and bewildered, they try to make most of their new freedom. Now, in the wrong hands, this could have been Disney's new Lion King spinoff. But lucky for us, BKV chose to go a little deeper than that. On the surface, many may find Pride to be a parable of the horrors of war. We've all seen the news, and we've all heard the stories. It's kind of hard to miss these days. But here we get a completely new perspective on the war. These poor animals are stuck in the middle of a situation that they can't understand and have no control over. In fact, the entire story is told through the various animals in the book. And while the animals are fully developed and unique characters, the humans are faceless, seen by some as benevolent caretakers and as cruel jailers by others. There's a metaphor here, but like much of the book, Vaughan leaves that interpretation to the reader. The major theme of the book is that of freedom. The youngest lion, a cub named Ali, was born in captivity and knows nothing of the wild. There's a scene early on where he has a hard time understanding what the sunset on the horizon is, knowing only the confines of the zoo walls. So, when they're freed, he can't wait to explore all the new hunting ground. This excitement is tempered by Safa, the eldest female. Initially, she decides to stay and take her chances dying of old age, rather than risk the uncertainty that their new freedom has given them. But events unfold and give her no choice but to join Zil, the alpha male, and Ali's mother, Noor. What will their new freedom cost? Is it better to be safe and confined or free and at risk? These are questions that go much deeper below the surface than just some lions on the run. And remember when I said that Pride could easily have gone the Disney route without its serious themes? It's also due to the skill of artist Nico Onrishon. All of the characters are easily recognizable, full of emotion, but never cartoony. The lions look like lions, but are expressive enough that they are unique and full of character, from the youthful excitement of young Ali to the world-weariness of elder Safa. Colors also play a huge role. Onrishon's colors are warm and rich and play a big part in conveying mood, from the starkness of the zoo to the lush Tigris River. I'm not familiar with Onrishon's previous work, but he is definitely a talent to look out for. I highly recommend The Pride of Baghdad. Brian K. Vaughan and Nico Onrishon take this simple premise of a zoo escape and turn it into a deep exploration of war and the cost of freedom. It is to the credit of Vaughan that he lets readers come to their own conclusions. And, like I'm sure you can guess, it doesn't have a very happy ending. But it did leave me wondering exactly who is the King of the Beasts.
My next review is Street Fighter The Ultimate Edition. Now, I did my summer reading of a Street Fighter hardcover book that kind of just went in depth as to the whole realm that is Street Fighter. Every character, pictures, blah blah blah, the whole history of Street Fighter, merchandising. It had everything in it. This is not that. This is the Udon Ultimate Release. Every issue, every backup story to every character. The one main thing that Udon did that I kind of didn't like, their graphics for Street Fighter were very small. They were only, like a quarter of this, and it was all small print. And yes, I read them, and yes, I loved them, but now you have them in big format, huge, beautiful, Alvin Lee amazingness. If you're not up to date on Street Fighter, well, this is it. This is like your absolute But no, they didn't stop here with just this one. There's a convention exclusive with Akuma on it, which is a hardcover, which I'm getting because I'm dumb. Beyond the point, though, this has everything in it. The art looks amazing, all blown up. This is definitely worth the buy. It's $50. You have to order it at a preview, so I'm sure every comic shop isn't going to have a bunch of these just waiting to pick off the shelf. Go on your previews, order it, and you go on the Udon site, you could order the convention exclusive with Akuma on it. I think it's like $70 for that one, but it's hardcover and it's a convention exclusive. So, definitely worth the buy. I'm into Street Fighter, I love Street Fighter, pick it up.
So here comes the good news, guys. You loved the Claws #1 review so much that I decided to do #2. Yes, even though this book was god-awful, I sat down and read it because I've gotten many compliments on how boring I was in the Claws review, and just kind of let you know that it was utter crap. So Claws #2 picks you right back up, Wolverine and Black Cat on the island, and they're behind a log and a rocket's coming at them, and then it blows up and stuff happens because I stopped paying attention to the book at that point. No, honestly, I did read it. And it turns out Kraven isn't really an undead zombie sort of a thing. He's actually a robot, and Arcade is behind the whole thing, and the White Rabbit is there, and there's a little sidekick. Yeah, there's minefields and dart guns and poisonous darts, and again, this book is just horrible. You can stop reading it. I don't know why the first one sold out like it did. Obviously, nobody knew how bad it was going to be. There's magma. Magma comes falling out of the sky, and this book is horrible. Don't pick up this book. It was god awful, and I didn't enjoy a minute of reading it. I thought it was forced and very not good would be the way I would say. Or no, it's not awesome. It's definitely not an awesome comic book. I've read many an awesome comic book, and this definitely is not an awesome comic book. There's giant robots. That doesn't make up for anything. There's a spill of magma coming down. Again, that doesn't make up for anything. And Wolverine's cut apart several times. Again, doesn't make up for anything. And there's napalm. Doesn't make up for the comic book. Story's bad. The drawing's okay, and it's just a bad story. Don't pick up this book again. You can coast through it, use it as kindling, or a protector for better comics.
So this week, issue 31 of Walking Dead came out. I was eagerly looking forward to it. All of you reading Walking Dead, I'm pretty sure each issue you're eagerly looking forward to. So this one, they bring you back to the governor's town, the little town that messed up psychopath likes to call himself the governor, calls civilization. It's back there. And it starts off with Rick being in the med center of this town, being bandaged up, checked over by the doctor, and you notice that there's a lot of increased security in that med room simply for the fact that Rick's health and condition has improved, and they don't want him, running out or, causing some havoc, despite the fact that he only has one hand. But anyway, that's kind of upsetting to Rick because he wants to get the hell out of there. So it goes on. Rick's getting bandaged up. They bring in another fighter from the zombie fights that they have, where they have two people fight and they have the zombies around them. It's like that big arena thing to keep people entertained and occupied while this end-of-the-world crap's going on. So they bring him in, fixing him up, and then another fighter comes in who got his teeth knocked out because of the other guy, stabs him in the throat, and then leaves. So now the governor's like, we had a fight tonight between these guys. Who do I get in place of this dead guy? And he thinks, that chick I got tied up for my own pleasure. That's who I'll use. So he spills the stuff to Michonne, and he tells her, you can go into a zombie fight tonight, fight this guy, it's rigged, you kind of, you rough up the other person, you don't do any real damage to him. And he says, if you do this well, blah, 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 I'll go easy on you, I'll make your time here a little bit better. Well, Michonne, being the awesome character that she is, goes out into that fight, lobs her opponent's head off, and lobs off all the heads of the zombies in the arena. Great fight. Incredibly one-sided, but then again it was Michonne with her katana. So people are upset about that. The governor is extremely pissed off just for the fact that this chick, who he gave this opportunity to, went against him, killed another guy, and he's just pissed. At the end, you see Rick talking to the nurse in the med center, well, now turned nurse, and there's a nice little surprise ending, not as shocking as the last couple of endings have been, but you're definitely going to know that the next couple issues are going to be even more intense, as if this entire series hasn't been intense enough. So that's it for my Walking Dead review this week.
All right, so in Baltimore, we had a ton of interviews, and this is one of them. Ivan Brandon and Michael Avon Oeming, the guys that are behind Cross Bronx, a book that I hold in high regard. You saw my review. I called them my version of Jim Lee and Frank Miller, except I still think they're better. I blew our interviews with them, but hey, here's the interview. Enjoy it, guys. All right, it's Ricky, Baltimore Comic-Con, and I am joined by my version of Frank Miller and Jim Lee, Michael Avon Oeming, and Ivan Brandon.
The really poor man's version.
You know, I could see you guys that high.
It's like we're the Kmart of Frank Miller and Jim Lee.
Kmart's good for some stuff, okay?
Maybe Target then.
Target, please. It's French.
The dollar store version. That's right.
All right, so I want to talk to you guys specifically about Cross Bronx. I did a review on it.
Okay.
Obviously, I loved it. Obvious. Now, I just want to know the future of what's to come from this. Are you guys just going to do this one arc of it, or do you guys have more planned as far as storyline and developing of characters or anything like that?
We've been asked that a couple times this weekend, and it's sort of a weird question to answer because answering it sort of spoils where we end up in the story. I will say that if we ended up doing something, it would be completely different. It wouldn't be a literal sequel. It wouldn't be what you would expect to see from a sequel. The way we end Cross Bronx is fairly final, and I'm not going to say the door is closed so much as it wouldn't be like, you know, Die Hard 2. He's down the street, you know.
That's right. The sequel's going to be called Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. You're using a lot of kind of like visual dialogue, I guess to say, rather than having the words there. The picture that's on the page will speak for itself kind of heavily, which is great. Because not a lot of people tend to do that. They kind of over-explain things, and then they'll overdo the drawing and everything on it. And this book has the perfect match of, you know, the dialogue meeting the, you know, the visual effects of just seeing, you know, kind of the gore and the drugs and the, you know, all the booze. And like the one part in particular I'm talking about is when the gun is on the table in that crazy woman's house. Yeah. And it, you know, you see the gun, the outline of it, and the candle wax kind of like melted around that.
So glad people picked up on that. Because when you do stuff like that, you are risking the chance that it's going to go not over people's heads, but you know, a lot of people speed read through comics and stuff. You risk that you take the chance of something not being clear of what's going on. Luckily, I think partially because Ivan, while he isn't an artist per se, has an artistic mind. He knows how to think visually. So between the two of us, we can make sure that whatever's in the script, if we're pulling back from dialogue and such, Ivan knows as well as I do how to get that kind of stuff across without it falling through. Okay. So that's a big part of our working relationship, I think, is that we both think similarly, even though we're coming from very different directions. We understand that sort of the visual need of something.
All right, and now, how did this initially come about? The whole idea of Cross Bronx, you guys getting together to do this. I know you guys have been friends, so, you know, there's discussions, I know, probably amongst everybody here, but how did this, like, get, you know, full circle going?
I can tell you the actual, because I was saying earlier, I don't think we've ever actually explained the actual process. Basically what happened a few years ago, before Mike was even writing anything, Mike approached me about working with him on this story. And we literally, I think we figured out it's probably about 6 years ago. And way back then, Mike had a loose outline of what he wanted it to be. I think I worked on the outline, added some things to it, and changed a couple things. Then I went out and scripted a first draft of all of the issues. From then, Mike took a pass at it, made changes to that, added to that as well. We go back and forth. There've been. This is probably the most organic book I've ever worked on, in that there are so many different passes on it, and they may be minor changes. A draft might be just one page is different, or just one line of dialogue, or what have you. But we go back and forth, and we really just pass it back and forth. At some point, we get to what's a working draft in terms of drawing. Michael draw the whole thing out. That's almost a draft in and of itself, because Michael changed a lot of it. And the beauty of like an image book where we have the full 32 pages to work with, you'll notice going forward that every single one of the issues is extra long, because Michael decided to throw a splash page in just to punch up that moment, to add drama to that. Once that's done, then I'll go, much to the chagrin of our letterer, and have that lettered, and then I'll go and take another pass still and figure out, at that point it's like the equivalent, the analogy is if you're looking at music, the song is recorded, The tracks are all there, and this is a producer going back in and adjusting the levels and making sure that every note falls exactly in the right spot.
So it's just like a remastering of the final.
Once I'm done with the actual page and I send in some minor notes from that, I just leave it in Ivan's hands from that point on. From that point on, the production, the final draft of the script, the final bits of dialogue, all the rest of it's in his hands from that point on.
Yeah, at that point, I'll look at the page and like you look at something, and the character might be saying something in the dialogue in the script, but he might be saying more visually, and so you can figure out what needs to be said there. You know, the pacing might be, this is just slightly off, you move this to a left, or this word needs to go out, and again, it's just really, really fine-tuning it so that, again, to use the stupid music analogy, every beat just falls exactly right.
Yeah, and the book definitely seems to have that. You guys put your hard work into it. It's great. My reaction to it was obviously very positive, and I loved it. Now, talking to other people, coming up to you, whatever, what's everyone else's opinion on the book?
I haven't heard anything but a positive reaction. We had a weird response. The only thing that I heard was a guy on one of the message boards who had said that he flipped through it in the store and the writing wasn't for him, which I didn't know how you could critique. Yeah, I didn't know how you could critique writing based on flipping through the store. But I could see. I mean, art, yeah, sure, but like he didn't. The writing wasn't for him, and so that's the only negative thing that I've heard. But yeah, we had.
It's like I don't get it kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a weird thing, but maybe I just misunderstood the thing. But that was funny. But beyond that, yeah, everything has been just enormously positive. I'm kind of blown away because I mean, both of us do a lot of books, and I think the nature of the type of work that Mike and I do is you're sort of producing these things in a void. You're really not you're not doing things for the sake of necessarily marketability or what have you. You're doing a very organic sort of holistic thing, and to actually you never quite know. I mean, I think we knew people were going to like it, but you never quite know how they're going to react. And
yeah, especially with like there's like those silent moments. And it's like, if you don't buy into it, it's not like something that almost doesn't work. If it doesn't work, man, it's like it totally falls flat.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not like following the complete detail of the book, something could just go right over your head, and you won't even notice it. This book had me hooked, man. I just couldn't. There was no point. I was just like, no. Your artwork. Not to say anything against anything else you've done, but I think this is probably the best book you've probably done yet. And in my opinion, I really love everything about it.
I'm biased, but I gotta admit, I think also by far it really is. It's one of those things Mike said that like. It comes so naturally to him. He doesn't necessarily like labor over the pages. They flow very quickly for him. And
the pressure's off. Like on Powers, I feel like I know there's an audience, people are watching it, blah blah blah, blah. Or something like this. The pressure's off, and it is whatever it is, and it's organic, and that works easier.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. So that's it. Thank you so much again for doing this. It's been a wonderful pleasure. Pick up Cross Bronx. If there's any book I'm telling you to pick up, pick this book up. It's great.
Thank you, Grand Edition. Hi, Mom.
Oh wait, my mom's dead.
All right, so today we're going to do discussion a little differently. Mike and Ricky always get to have the fun, so I figured, I want to jump in and talk about Civil War.
Because it's fun, and it's a great topic. And Civil War #4 just hit the shelves, and it's a hell of a comic.
It's a shocker.
It is a shocker. Oh, what a great pun that was right there.
Yeah, very cool. I've been thinking about that one all day.
Yeah, and of course he's talking about Thor. Or is it Thor?
Yeah, you get a little further into the issue. Well, I mean, we'll do this in order here, but there's like a couple of really big things going on in this issue.
Including Thor handing some smackdown to like everybody. So of course the big character they were talking about that they were going to kill was Goliath. Big literally, not big meaning Captain America or Iron Man, whereas their fan attention would be big. It's just a very large person. Superhuman.
And that was kind of surprising.
Very big surprise.
Because, the death is handed out by Thor, and
Thor doesn't usually kill.
Yeah.
Stuns, defeats, conquest, throws into a prison, maybe, but definitely does not kill. But he kills Goliath, knocks him flat down, big hole through his nice manly chest there.
But the cool thing about that was what happens next.
Which is...
Sue Storm pops in and is like, okay, enough of this.
Does a protection field, Cloak gets them all out of there, and of course, naturally, everyone's kind of angry at Sue. But they don't really speak about it in the comic book, but I can only imagine that people are very angry
because it looks
Sue.
like all the rest of the, Iron Man Avengers were kind of as shocked by what happened as she was, so nobody seemed to be breaking ranks about her letting them go. Until, later on when they get back to headquarters, Avengers Tower, and you see exactly what Thor is. And I say what because he's not a who.
Yeah, apparently Thor is a clone.
And like any clone, if it doesn't have a soul, that's kind of hard to control.
And of course, this little shot right here in this corner.
I even missed this the first time I read it, till I read it through the second time. That thing that happened in Fantastic Four,
with Thor's hammer being picked up in the middle of Kansas or wherever that was.
This is not Thor's hammer.
This is not Thor's hammer. This has got gadgetry and electrodes and crazy wires coming out of it, and they're trying to fix it, I guess, or whatever they're doing. There's some guys just kind of looking at it like, oh, it's Thor's hammer.
You know, I mean, it put out the lightning powers, but it was not Thor. So
yeah, so we're not dealing with Thor. We're dealing with a clone of Thor, naturally.
And I think the thing that they did with Spider-Man towards the end was a little too heavy-handed. Because I mean, you know, let's make it a little obvious. I mean, maybe that's because we all kind of know what's coming down. You know, they made it pretty obvious that Spider-Man's going to switch sides. But in the book, it's like it's pretty heavy-handed.
Obvious.
Oh, yeah.
There's a guy with blonde hair in some kind of chamber filled with liquid. Looks like he's being cloned. They're saying that the 50 State Initiative?
Yeah,
Yes.
and I don't think that's a coincidence. You got some blonde guy being cloned, and you're talking about the 50 State Initiative.
Meanwhile, we already know that they cloned Thor, so let's assume that they're cloning all of the Avengers.
Yeah. That's pretty insidious.
This is true. And of course, the hugest shocker for Civil War #4 is that Iron Man's side is, in fact, bringing in Bullseye, Lady Deathstrike. No, that's not Lady Deathstrike.
That's Lady Deathstrike.
That's Lady Deathstrike, Venom,
Yeah.
Taskmaster.
She's from the... basically, they're reforming... They're having the Thunderbolts take on all the villains, which, again, they sort of did in the Thunderbolts book, but some of these guys weren't part of the Thunderbolts book.
Especially not Jack O'Lantern.
No, so it's like, I gotta say, Iron Man is faltering a little bit, getting the villains to try to do his
He's losing
bidding.
his steam. He is
That's
definitely
not the
losing his
smartest
steam.
idea.
This is a series that is just not getting old and is just going
and
up.
It hasn't disappointed me at all. And, you know, you get the fanboys or, you know, the people on message boards like, oh, it's starting to lose its... forget about that. This is a really good story. It's very masterfully told. You know, there's obviously, it's going somewhere. I just think that maybe the timing and the delays, you know, it lost a little of its momentum.
I'm okay with that, because waiting for a good thing never bothered me before.
But, you know, you get the fanboys a little cranky sometimes. We love you when you watch our show, though.
Of course. Keep tuning in.
All right, so that's the review for we've babbled on about Civil War enough. But
that's the big Civil War discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed. And now you're going to see Kevin magically become Ricky, and then we're going to close the show, and this comic book will disappear. Probably a whole other camera angle. We'll see.
I don't know. I think I'm just going to fade out and have Ricky fade in.
Okay.
All right, so another heated debate about the Civil War. A lot of people have good things to say. A lot of people have bad things to say. And Mike and Kevin gave you both sides of the spectrum. I mean, there's people on our website at our forum that are like, oh, what are they doing? They're screwing it all up. And read the book. They're not screwing anything up.
It's good.
It's good.
It's a good book. You should buy the book. It's good.
Mike's
I have no idea why I just went into that accent.
He's Russian.
But yeah, that's the show.
That's the show. Our interview with Ivan Brandon and Mike Oeming, awesome. Great time in Baltimore. Buy Cross Bronx. Buy it.
And next week we have a little chit chat with Mike Turner. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, that was my fanboy moment for the Baltimore. But I think I handled it well. I think.
Oh yeah, totally professional.
I tried. But so we have that coming to you next week, Mike Turner, and more reviews, more goodness for you. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye. I don't know why I just said bye-bye.
I don't know either.
Let's do bye-bye.
Okay, hold this for a second.
Was that all right?
I think so.
He jerked the wire. That's all right.
I'm going to have to fix it.
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to use this. All right. That's fine.